This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Hello, welcome to a special episode of the Edge of the Box podcast where we're going to review the 2021 Premier League season so far, including what teams have a realistic shot at the title, who could sneak a European spot, and who have been the star performers thus far. Each of us will be naming our star performer, best young player, best signing, surprise package, and the most underwhelming player, the one that absolutely nobody wants. We'll also be picking our team of the season so far. So, first off, guys, good Christmas, Jonathan?
Yeah, pretty quiet, but I enjoyed it as much as ever.
Yeah,
I was meant to be in Austria and Slovenia, but obviously had to cancel that. But I ended up sharing a bottle of wine with Barry Glendenning from The Guardian at opposite ends of a bench on Clapham Common. And if that's not what Christmas is all about, I don't know what is.
It was a lovely festive image, and I don't know why I'm asking this because obviously not many people would have done anything for Christmas. But Martin, good one with the kids.
Yeah, standard, just the kids, isn't it? That's what Christmas is about, as they say.
Yeah. I mean,
how was yours, Dan?
Pretty standard. All right, couldn't see any family, so just me and the wife at home. So yeah, it was good though. It was different. I ate a lot of food. Obviously, I'm still eating food now after all the lockdown news. Need to cut that out at some point, but the football's gone okay as well. So yeah, all I'm doing is watching football and eating food pretty much at the moment. That's all I did at Christmas. Right then, to start off with then on this special episode, we're going to talk about a variety of things of the season so far and what we think is going to happen as the season unfolds. So the first question is, how many teams are going to be involved in the title race by the end of the season? So I'll start with you, Martin. Which teams do you think are genuinely going to be involved in the title race as the season evens itself out a little bit?
See, I'm still struggling to see past two, to be honest. Even despite what's happened over Christmas, I just think a lot of people won't be into XG and stuff like that and expected points. But if you look at those sorts of tables, you'll see that Liverpool are basically performing as they should be, and Manchester City are actually a little bit below what you'd expect, whereas teams like Manchester United, Tottenham, they're all quite a lot above what you'd expect. And I, personally, as someone who reads into stats, I do think those things tend to sort of even themselves out. So I think it will be much closer between the top two and obviously third, fourth, fifth, even sixth. I think that it'll be very tight, but I still think when it comes down to it, within the sort of last few games of the season, I suppose it depends what you sort of define as a race, a title race. But by the last sort of three or four, maybe the last month of the season, I still think it will be. Personally, I think it'll be Liverpool and Man City. I think we did a poll on our Twitter page asking how many teams, whether it be 2, 3, 4, or 5 plus, and the least sort of popular vote was for 2, which surprised me. So people are expecting a 3, 4, 5 horse race this season. It's not really happened since in about 7 years. I think there was a season when City, Liverpool and Chelsea were split by 4 points. Other than that, there's always a sort of more than a 10-point gap between first and third. So it's very, very rare. And I'm not saying it won't happen, but personally, I just can't see past City and Liverpool just to sort of break away slightly this time.
I mean, I think we can all agree it's going to be a lot closer than the Premier League was last season. Jonathan, what about you? I mean, Man City, they're starting to sizzle now, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were really impressive both against Chelsea and against Manchester United in the League Cup. It's not that long ago. I mean, the game against West Brom was, I think, the 15th of December. And after that game, I was sort of thinking, well, is this the worst team Guardiola's ever had? I mean, obviously, that's a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
But I think that was not an unreasonable thing to think at the time. But they look defensively sound, and they've been for a while. And the last 2 games, they've been playing with that attacking verve. So yeah, I think it will be City v Liverpool essentially, but the points tally of the winner is not going to be 95 points plus. It might not even be 85 plus. It might not even be more than 80. I think it probably will be. I think City and Liverpool will both pick up more points in the second half of the season than they did in the first. But if it does come down to 80, then although it's a small chance, but you can't deny that the likes of United and Tottenham and Chelsea and Everton and Villa and Leicester and Southampton, they do have much more of a chance than they have done in previous seasons.
Do you think, Jonathan, if ever there was going to be, I mean, the Leicester year was an absolute freak, but if ever there was going to be a year where there was another Leicester-like display and someone did rise from nowhere and win the title, it probably would be this season, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think precisely for that reason that to get 95 points or more, you have to be exceptional and exceptionally consistent. And it's very hard for a team, even a team not in Europe, it's very hard to do that without a deep squad and without sort of the quality throughout the team. I mean, you look at when Leicester did it, they had sort of 7 or 8 players had the season of their lives at the same time. And that's just something that doesn't happen. I mean, that's why you don't get Leicester seasons. But if you're only having to get 82 points to win the title, then obviously that becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah, and Martin, I mean, Tottenham were the ones I thought that might take advantage of this situation, the way the world is, the way the Premier League is at the moment. Obviously, Mourinho's got that experience of winning titles, but they seem to have fell away a touch over the Christmas period.
Yeah, I think we sort of went back into, obviously, where they played those sort of 3 games in succession against big teams, and they could set up in a very similar way, and it worked perfectly in terms of results, almost perfectly, because they didn't beat Chelsea, but where they had to go from there to then changing tack, there was sort of it was naturally going to be quite difficult to go from a very, very defensive system to something that's a little more ambitious. I think they struggled a little bit with that transition, but then obviously they were very, very impressive against Leeds. But I think obviously most of the sort of big teams are being quite impressive against Leeds. So there's probably a theme there. I just think I've got Tottenham fan friends, plenty of them, and they go from, I think it's similar in most fan cases, but they go from sort of we could win the league, and then for like 3 or 4 games they were like, oh, this is just so painful to watch. It's just dire. So yeah, I just don't think they'll be consistent enough over the course of the season. I think you're obviously relying on Harry Kane and Son to just fire every game, which they could do. They're not far off doing that. But yeah, I just think they'll fall short. There'll just be too many games where they fall flat and their plan doesn't work. So I think that I don't see them coming. I think they'll be 4th or 5th. I don't think they'll come 3rd personally. I think Manchester United have probably got the best chance of coming 3rd. But yeah, like you say, it's so tight, so tight between those teams. So I think you could sort of throw a sheet over 3 or 4, but behind Liverpool and Man City in terms of points, they could be split by 4 or 5 points. But yeah, I just think that the 2 at the top will just have, well, not 2 at the top at the moment, but the 2 that I expect to be at the top will just have a bit too much.
Yeah, I can only see it being a bit of 2-horse race in the end. I think things will start to balance out as the season goes on, and I think those 2 will be the most consistent, and they've obviously got the most experience of being in the race in recent times as well. Now, we've got here about which team is most likely to claim a place in the top 6 from Leicester, Everton, Southampton, Villa, West Ham and Arsenal, which tells you how tight the league is this season. Jonathan, I'll come to you first, although I'd also like to know, is there any there that you actually genuinely think could challenge for the title?
No, not really. I mean, it's not completely beyond the bounds of possibility, but I think realistically not. So of those, how many teams did you list there? 6 teams did you list there?
Leicester, Everton, Southampton, Villa, West Ham, Arsenal. Okay,
well, not West Ham, clearly. That's
no.
I think Everton are fairly limited. I mean, I think they're obviously better than they've been. They could do it, but I'm not 100% convinced by them. Arsenal are improving, so given that we sort of assume their natural level is around about 6th, then they could. I would say it's between Arsenal and Southampton. Yeah, I mean, look, Villa have been great, and maybe they can keep it going. But you just sort of assume that there will be sort of a levelling off, and were Grealish to get injured or were Ollie Watkins to get injured, that would clearly have a huge impact on them. Whereas you feel that Southampton, say, they have lost Ings and Chadhams was able to step up, and they got Walcott as well, and they've got a little bit more depth there. So I would say, Arsenal or Southampton.
Fair enough. And Martin, what about you? I'm quick before we do come to you. I'm gonna go for Leicester. I think Leicester are incredible. I think they've done so well to bounce back from their not failure, because obviously where they finished last season was exceptional, but dropping out of the top 4, that could have been a bad thing. They've had a lot of injuries. I think they're actually, for me, the most likely to finish in the top 6. What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree. I just think obviously they're best positioned to at the moment, and they just haven't really had a wobble like the other teams. They've had sort of minor ones, but it's been 1 or 2 games. Whereas Everton, Villa have had little runs where they just haven't picked up a win. I'd like to think Southampton could sort of mount a charge, but again, I just don't think they'll be quite consistent enough. And I think this season we've seen obviously Danny Ings struggle with a few injuries, like little niggling injuries. But he's so massive to them. So if that continues over the course of the season, I think they'll have to manage him pretty closely because he has had so many big injury problems in the past. Then I think that might curtail their sort of chances. I don't think Arsenal will quite get there. I think there will be a sort of relatively sort of reactionary thing to the last sort of few games to suggest that they'll sort of climb that many places. I know there's not many points between them. But I think you have to look at the quality of the opposition that they played. Obviously, they looked amazing against West Brom, but West Brom was so bad. So yeah, I'm not entirely convinced by Arsenal, and obviously I'd love it to be Villa. But I think again they'll probably just fall short. I think we've seen with the injuries to Barkley and Trezeguet in particular that while the starting 11 in their absence has performed well, when you look at the bench, it's like, phew. You're calling on Jacob Ramsey and Keenan Davis first from the bench. That's what you've got from the bench, and that's a big problem. So that's where Villa will fall short, in my opinion. Obviously, like Jonathan says, if Grealish or Watkins got injured, that's a big if, because neither of them have ever really had injury problems. But if they did, becomes a problem. But I think, like you say, even if Barkley keeps picking up injuries, that lack of depth in attacking areas will be their sort of shortfall, I think. So yeah, I'd say Leicester, and I'd say I'll stick Villa as the sort of next most likely, but I think it'll be Leicester.
I tell you what, as well, I'm going to make an editorial decision as well. We'll be taking out the bit where Martin claims that Villa players never get injured, because I feel like that's absolutely certain. They're bound to get injured in the next couple of weeks. And Jonathan, just before we move on to the next section, I mean, we saw Ralph Hasenhüttl's celebrations or breakdown at the end of the game if that when they beat Liverpool. Imagine what it would be like if they won the league.
Yeah, and that was it was simultaneously touching and slightly worrying. That Ralph, it's just a league game in January, mate. Kind of calm down. It's all right. But I guess Liverpool play the sort of football that he would like Southampton to play. I guess Klopp, sort of is the sort of high priest of that style that he plays. And Southampton did play really, really well. I mean, the first half particularly, they really rattled Liverpool, and Liverpool, didn't react well to being pressed against. The second half, it sort of settled into more of a standard pattern for Liverpool games, but Southampton defended really well against that. So it was a really, really good performance of Southampton. And I guess he was very tense, but still to be down your knees crying after a 1-0 win over a faltering champion in the middle of January is, it seems excessive.
Now, before we get on with the rest of the show, we do have a little competition. So we've got another 5 Steam download codes, courtesy of our friends at Football Manager, to give away for this season's game. All you need to do is reply with your answer to the following question in the comments section of our YouTube video. And please like and subscribe to the podcast while you're at it. The question is, which team's matches have seen the most goals this season? So that's both goals scored and goals conceded combined. You have until 9 o'clock on Monday, the 11th of January to enter, and we'll reply to 5 winners at random, so have your notifications on. This giveaway is open to UK residents aged 18 or over, with only 1 entry per person. We will draw 5 random winners from valid entries. You must post a correct answer to the question in the comments section of this podcast video on YouTube for valid entry. Full terms and conditions apply. We move on now to the Premier League team of the season so far, and the first thing we're going to do is look at the Who Scored variant of that side. So I'll hand over to Martin to go through that, because it's his baby essentially, and there's a few things again that I disagree with there.
So before we get into anything, I know that both of you will have massive questions over the tactical balance of this team,
Big
which
problems.
is absolutely justified. I get that. But just to caveat it with, this is the team on the site that is automated. It's a statistical team. You can only fit in 4-4-2. We can't go through every single league, every single game, and make tailored tweets for all the leagues that we cover, and that would be subjective, which is against what Who Scored is about. We try and give an objective view in terms of a statistical rating that everyone's judged upon. So the team is 4-4-2. Certain positions, like if you play on the right of a front three, for example, you qualify for right midfield rather than up front. Same with attacking midfield, you qualify for central midfield rather than up front. Otherwise, everyone would qualify for up front, and you'd miss out so many players. So yeah, that's out of the way. So yeah, it's a 4-4-2, and in goal is Carl Darlow, which I think is obviously it would be a massive surprise ahead of the season. Not obviously the first choice goalkeeper at Newcastle prior to this season, but I just think he's been outstanding. They've relied so heavily on him. He's been their star player, even ahead of Callum Wilson, who's obviously scored the goals at the other end. Without Carl Darlow in certain matches, even in matches they've lost, they'd have lost 6 or 7 sometimes. I think with him, it's the quality of saves that he's making as well as the volume. He's just been so good. Made the 3rd most saves, but like I say, in some games, like the point they got against Tottenham, I think he made sort of double figures for saves and stuff. So he's been exceptional and tellingly kept his place over Dubravka, who was back fit to make the bench last time out. At right back is Matty Cash. Obviously settled really well into the Premier League. Just a very busy defender, which will always bode well in a statistical rating. Like the more involved you are, the higher chance you have of having a positive influence on your rating. So he's made the 3rd most tackles and interceptions combined in the league this season, and the most of any fullback by a distance. At centre back is Kurt Zouma. Again, his ratings dropped quite a lot over the last sort of month, which you'd expect, but where Chelsea were keeping clean sheets most weeks and Kurt Zouma was scoring quite a lot of those weeks, he had a very, very strong rating at the start of the season. So he's kept his place. Alongside him, Yannick Vestergaard, another one who probably wasn't even necessarily considered first choice ahead of the season, but he's been a literal giant at the back. He is absolutely massive. But yes, so dominant in the air in both boxes. Southampton's win rate has actually doubled over the last year when he's been involved. So I think they won 31% of the matches that he didn't start last season and 61% when he did over the course of 2020. So a big player for them in every sense. Left back is Joao Cancelo, another one I think is quite telling with the sort of certainly with the defence in this team that they're players that sort of ahead of the season you wouldn't even necessarily think would be playing. But I think Joao Cancelo has been outstanding. I think he's been one of Man City's most consistent performers, certainly, and obviously one of their most versatile. Massive asset to Pep this season. So right midfield is Mo Salah, top scorer in the league. Goes without saying, exceptional player on his day. Can be a little bit inconsistent, but when he's on it, he's basically unstoppable. The central midfield is in a very attacking midfield is Bruno Fernandes and Jack Grealish. Don't think we need to say too much on that.
Which one of them is sitting?
Which one of them sitting? Oh, they're
sitting midfielder. No.
Both doing all the dirty work. They love that. Son on the left again, obviously plays left forward, but fits in on left midfield, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. With Harry Kane up front, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's obviously been a revelation this season. So yeah, that is the Who Scored 11. Pick at it as you will.
Jonathan, pick away.
I worry about the balance of that midfield. I feel out of possession, we might be able to get at them.
Yeah, there's a few problems in there. Are you surprised that Martin, who had shown a bit of tactical flexibility in recent weeks, has gone back to his old 4-4-2?
I feel like I've been through this. This is not my team.
Not surprised, but disappointed.
Let's go on to our own teams now. Now, I think I'm right in saying that we're all playing 4-3-3. Is that correct? Although mine's quite flexible, could be a 4-2-3-1.
When I did your graphic, Dan, I sort of did it as a 4-2-3-1, and I did mine and Jonathan's as a 4-3-3. But
yeah, I think. I mean, this is a very boring tactical point, so feel free to skip for the next minute or so. But I think 4-2-3-1 is actually a variant of 4-3-3, not a variant of 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Because if you think of a 4-3-3, the classics are Dutch or Argentinian form of 4-3-3. The central three, you've got the deep lying one, you've got the sort of number 10 creator, and then you've got the sort of number 8, the shuttler in between the two. So it's a triangle that's tipped slightly, And so that number 10, is he in that line of three with the two wingers, or is he sort of behind and the wingers level with the forward? And I think that's a very sort of it's a tiny distinction to be making. So if you look at sort of the Louis van Gaal Ajax side in '95, which everybody talked about as being the 4-3-3, I think now we might describe it as a 4-2-3-1 because you had Jari Littmanen dropping off a centre forward rather than being a natural midfielder. But so 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, I would say are essentially almost the same thing.
You'd almost think that you'd write a book on football tactics and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's still available. It's called Inverting the Pyramid, and you can get it. I'm sure it's discounted somewhere now.
Let's move on from Jonathan's shameless self-promotion then, and we'll go on to our team. So, Martin, we'll come to you first. Who have you gone for in goal?
Is there any other choice, Dan? Emi Martinez. Emi Martinez for me, just been revelationary for Villa in terms of we've been so used to not very reliable goalkeepers, and that's exactly what he is. That's exactly what he's been. I don't want to jinx it, like you said. I don't want to do too many.
You're killing Villa in this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But he's just been super reliable. Made very, very good saves. Just so commanding. Just everything that Villa have lacked for years. Sam Johnston was a decent keeper for Villa, but beyond that, over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years, it's been a bit of a mess at times. Obviously, that's a bit harsh on Tom Heaton, who sort of played half a season, but obviously then got injured. So yeah, it just he's had such a transformational effect on the entire Villa team, not just the defence. So yeah, for me, Emi Martinez is my choice.
You say, is there any other choice? But Jonathan has gone with the same as who scored, I believe, with Carl Darlow.
Yeah, I mean, I found it quite difficult because I think there's quite a few keepers who've played well this season. I think Nick Pope's played really well. Martinez has played well. Lloris, I think, having had a bit of a wobble in form, I think has been excellent again. I mean, part of my selection of this team was two sort of guiding principles, or three, because obviously I wanted a good team. But to pick a team that actually could play together, unlike whatever the computer says. And secondly, to try and spread it among as many teams as possible. So I put a limit on maximum 2 players per club. So given other people in the team, I couldn't have a Tottenham keeper. And Darlow, I guess I did my team just after Newcastle had drawn against Liverpool. So those saves were very fresh in my mind. But yeah, I think Darlow has been exceptional. In a team that's really needed him to be exceptional.
Yeah, I think he saved a penalty from Fernandes as well, which is quite rare if my memory serves me correctly. And I've gone for Martinez as well. I'm a bit worried that obviously 2 Villa fans talking through their team that this may look quite biased as we go through. But I genuinely believe that Villa have been excellent so far this season. So I've gone for Emi Martinez as well. I still can't believe Villa picked him up. I think he's a fantastic goalkeeper. For me, he's probably better than Leno. I still can't believe it. So yeah, I've gone for him.
Gordon Cowan's at the back of midfield, Gary Shaw on the left.
Paul Merson in the hole as well, we'll go for. Well, let's move on to right back. So we'll start with you this time, Martin. Who's your right back?
Who is my right back? That's a good point. It is, well, this is again, this might get a few question marks, but it's João Cancelo, who I realise has played left back more than he's played right back this season. But yeah, he takes my spot on the right. I just think, like I said before, he's in the left back spot in the WhoScored team, right back spot in mine. But yeah, just been so versatile, so effective with and without the ball. I think he's defended really well, and his sort of creativity, his vision, even when he's played central midfield, it's been really surprising and eye catching. So yeah, I went for João Cancelo.
Jonathan, how about you?
I mean, I consider Cancelo, but purely because he's played most of the season at the left, and I think he's been better on the right. He's on my bench, and I went for Reece James. I think he's been certainly the best English right back. I think he now has gone ahead of Trent Alexander-Arnold to be my first choice for England. I don't think Alexander-Arnold's had a great season, and I think defensively Reece James is better than Alexander-Arnold. And he gives you a good blend of doing the attacking job that a right back needs to do now, while actually still being a good defender. And also, if I've learned anything from the last sort of 2 weeks of watching Chelsea, it's that if you pick younger players, you can excuse yourself bad results. Look, I've got kids in the team. What can I possibly do?
To be fair, I like what you're saying about Reece James there, because that goes along with what I think on the England situation, which I always think is good when you think the same things as me. Probably not great for you, but for me, it feels better when you have the same opinions as me. So that's a good one. I've gone with James Justin, but now I've suddenly started thinking he's probably played left back more than he's played right back. But he does seem to have moved to right back in recent weeks. I just think he's had a really good season, and he's a player I like watching. And I think Leicester have been very good. I think they've got one of the best defensive records as well. So I've gone with James Justin.
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting player actually, because I saw him pretty early last season when he first came into the side. And I'd never heard of him, and was just like, who's this kid? And it's like, actually, he's really good. He went completely under the radar last season. And again, I think he's got, when he plays at right back, he's got that blend of being able to get forward, but also being a decent defender, and he can play on the right side of a back three as well. So yeah, I think he's one of England's great glut of right backs. Because I mean, Tariq Lamptey, if you'd asked me after like a month of the season, I might have been Tariq Lamptey. Yeah,
true. Very, very true. I mean, let's face it, there's too many good English right backs at the moment. Obviously, Matty Cash has made the WhoScored statistical team as well. There's tons to mention. Yeah, I wish we had the same problems for England at left back. Right centre back, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, Stones, I mean, I know he only came into the team, a month ago, less than a month ago. But he's been brilliant. He's been back to the player we thought he might be. And it's great that a player who sort of had been written off, who I mean, I think he only started 12 games in the league last season, now appears to be not only first choice, but to be an exceptionally good first choice. I think City have only conceded 2 goals while he's been on the pitch this season. His partnership with Ruben Dias has been excellent. And again, I wanted to get a right-sided centre-back and a left-sided centre-back, because that's slightly restricted choice. But yeah, I think as a ball-playing centre-back, he's been the best.
Yeah, I mean, Martin, before we started the show, when we were waiting for Jonathan, you were very critical of this choice of John Stones. Just want to talk about that?
Very critical. Very critical. I feel like I was led into that criticism by someone. Yeah, for me, just like you say, Jonathan, I only came into the team last month or so, so I think I completely agree. I think he's been exceptional, and if you were judging it over that time, then I'd have him in. Just for me, not enough games.
He's fresh. He's
definitely fresh.
Who have you gone for, Martin?
The same as you, I believe, Dan. I've gone for Wesley Fofana at Leicester.
Well, I've got him left centre back on mine, but continue.
Plays on the right, so there you go. Just because I've been so impressed with how he's adapted to the league. Obviously, I don't know, is he still 19? He was 19 when he came in. But yeah, he's just one of the defenders that I've watched this season that I just haven't really seen a weakness in him. And for a player so young coming into a new league, I just think he's been strong, good in the air, good on the ball, fast. Don't see any weaknesses in him. So I think at the moment, touch wood. So I just think, yeah, he'll be one who's probably picked off before too long. I just think he's been super impressive.
I can tell you he has no weaknesses, because I actually went on the WhoScored website to check I hadn't dropped any clangers with my team afterwards, and had a look at his stats, and it says 0 weaknesses. So that was always good. Yeah, he's my left centre back. So I've gone for Ezri Konsa at right centre back, again, quite Villa heavy, which I'm wary of. But I believe he's the only centre back that hasn't been dribbled past once this season. I think that's true. I believe that's true. So yeah, on that alone, we'll have him in the team. Jonathan, we'll come to you for your left centre back now. We obviously know who mine is, Wesley Fofana, who Martin has described beautifully. Who's yours?
I went for Gabriel. Again, partly because he's adapted so quickly. I think that shows a great footballing intelligence. Yeah. I think in a generally uncommanding Arsenal team, he is commanding. I considered Vestergaard, and it was a real sort of toss up between the two. But I then sort of I essentially worried that I overrate Vestergaard because he's so good at in the opposite box. But yeah, Gabriel, largely because I just like the idea of 2 centre backs who can actually pass the ball. So him and Stones together, I think will be for the exceptional, pretty football my team will play, while also having a defensive edge. I thought he was just right.
and also being very balanced as well. And coming on to balance, who's your left centre back, Martin? I hope they're left-footed after what you've said.
I feel harsh on Yannick Vestergaard because he was mine and I took him out right at the end. And I must admit, it's a bit sneaky of me being able to change my team after you guys had submitted yours. Little bit reactionary, perhaps, based on last night, but I went for Ruben Dias. Just because does play left centre back alongside Stones, not left footed, I don't believe, but yeah.
No.
But yeah, I just think he's been exactly what they needed. And I think if City had spent, 60 odd million on another sort of centre back, that even if he had underwhelmed, even if he'd just sort of been okay, it would have just been a bit of a problem for their sort of transfer team. And he's just been outstanding. I think like not had a huge amount to do, admittedly, but I think it's just his presence and his command of that back four. You could see that he is the guy who's orchestrating them already. I think that's what you sort of don't get with John Stones. Excellent footballer, but he's not that character. And Ruben Dias has needed to be, and that's not always easy, joining a new team and being that vocal presence at the back. But you can see, certainly in last night's game, how committed he is, how sort of authoritative he is, and yeah, just an excellent defender as well as being good on the ball. Just sort of throws his body on the line, and yeah, just gets in ahead of Stones just based on the fact that he's played more often for me.
Yeah, should score more goals from set pieces as well. He always looks a threat, but he never quite gets on the end of things, or things drop just wide. On to left back, Jonathan, who's yours?
I went for Luca Dean after much hesitation. I'm now thinking I should have just gone for the City pairing. That would have been the sensible thing to do, because we know that partnership works. But too late now. Anyway, I made my decision. Yeah, I went for Luca Dean. I think before he got injured, he was probably Everton's best player in a good start of the season. Great at getting forward, great cross of the ball. I think has helped Calvert-Lewin's goal scoring. A lot of it has come from thrusts made by Dean. Andy Robertson, obviously, who I think has started every league game, every Champions League game this season. He was a big consideration. And in the end, I just thought I'll add an extra club, and so we'll go for Dean, but it could have been either. And also, I kind of think Andy Robertson must be tired by now, and we don't want to be giving him extra games he doesn't need to play in.
No, he certainly doesn't need any more games. Really interesting point you made about Dean there, because I feel like Calvert-Lewin's goals have dried up a little bit since he's been out the side, so that's a really interesting point. Martin, who have you gone for?
I've gone for Andy Robertson. I think he's been excellent, and obviously he's always excellent. Which is probably why he's looked even better this season, because Trent's had so many problems on the other side. But I think Robertson is now that consistent threat from left back, whereas you probably saw Alexander-Arnold as the more attacking of the two. I don't really see that as the case now. And Robertson just gets forward so well, gets his runs off the ball are outstanding, and his delivery is just so on point. Obviously, Liverpool don't have the sort of biggest strike force, but they get on the end of a lot of crosses just because the delivery is so good. And usually that's from both sides, and it hasn't really been the case this season for Alexander-Arnold. But yeah, Robertson's been typically outstanding for me.
I went for Ben Chilwell. It's interesting, we've all picked three different left backs, by the way. I went for Chilwell just because I think he's improved Chelsea tenfold at left back from what they had in previous seasons. I really like Chilwell. I think he's a phenomenal footballer, so I went for him. Jonathan, now I'll ask you for your midfield three, so you can explain the balance and the lineup there. Okay,
so at the back, I've gone for Calvin Phillips. I think he's absolutely critical to how Leeds play. I think when he's been fully fit, he's been exceptional. I think his understanding of space on the pitch, of when he needs to drop in between the centre backs, when he can carry the ball, his distribution of the ball, I think all of that is exceptional, and that's why he would get in ahead of say Declan Rice. Kante, I think, had a sort of a good 3 or 4 week period, but then has sort of faded a bit. So Calvin Phillips to sit as being somebody who occupies the space and is also great at distribution. The creative player, I went for Bruno Fernandes. I could have gone for Grealish, but just to sort of balance the side, I felt I couldn't go for both of them. And Bruno Fernandes tends to play slightly to the right, and I could play Mason Mount, who I think tactically is probably the most intelligent midfielder in the league, as the left side of the three. So you're Phillips sitting, Mount sort of just in front of him, sort of covering that left side area, and Fernandes is the creator. And Fernandes, I worry slightly that he's getting fatigued.
Looked tired last night.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't quite work out whether he was tired or whether Fernandinho was brilliant or some combination of the two. But yeah, I think what you really did see last night is that when Fernandes doesn't fire, United don't fire, and so to have that creative responsibility for a team that's that good, I think shows the measure of the player he is.
Yep. Is there a danger that you've put Mason Mount in there as just in case results go badly and you can make the excuse of playing?
No, it's not a danger. It's a very conscious policy.
What's your midfield three, Martin?
Well, I feel like going after Jonathan's entirely tactical 11. I'm just going to get picked apart here. I don't want to say. I want to say that this wasn't. We weren't asked to do this based on a tactical sort of 11. I've gone more.
No, hang on. No, you asked for a team of the season so far. You didn't ask for a list of 11 players who've been quite good this season.
I've gone for team of the season so far, the meaning of which being the best 11 individuals in those positions.
And that's why England haven't won a World Cup since 1966.
So, yeah, not as balanced as Jonathan. I'll concede that straight away. But yeah, I've gone for Thomas Soucek, who I guess you would say is at the base of my midfield. Just because the other two certainly aren't. I've gone for Thomas Soucek just because I think he's been so pivotal to the surprise that have been West Ham. And I think there was an interview with Declan Rice earlier in the season where they asked him about Soucek, and he was basically just saying, "Oh, it's been great to have someone who does the running in there and covers the ground." And I thought that was quite telling against Mark Noble, who he's played alongside for years. It was just you consider Noble to be that player who just gets about the pitch, he's just busy and doesn't do a hell of a lot else. But I think that was just telling that sort of you can cover the ground in intelligent ways. And Soucek's certainly one of those players, and certainly does it in the attacking sense as well, where he just picks up, makes late runs into the box, and obviously such a threat from set pieces. And I think with a signing like that, when you're signing a player who's so good in the air, you can almost sign a League Two player who's exceptional in the air, and if the delivery is right, he's going to score some goals. So it should have been sort of well known that Thomas Soucek would score goals. It's just then a case of, does he let the side down elsewhere? And he hasn't at all. He's been pivotal to the way that they play. So such a threat, so dangerous in the air. The most dangerous player in the air in the Premier League for me. He's got 5 goals, all of which have come pretty recently. So yeah, he's at the base of my midfield, and then I have Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne, who I think has just been overlooked in general this season, just because he's the best player in the league, and he hasn't quite hit the same standards as last season, but he's still got 8 assists in the league. I think he's got like 14 in all competitions. So he's still doing that part. His finishing's been off, admittedly. Only scored his first goal, not from the penalty spot, a couple of weeks ago or last week. So his finishing's been slightly off, but still, if you're literally looking at who is one of the best central midfielders in the league, then it's always going to be Kevin De Bruyne. So yeah, I've gone for De Bruyne and Fernandes in a super creative midfield with a lot of work for Thomas Soucek.
So I was a bit like Jonathan. I decided that you couldn't have De Bruyne and Fernandes really in the team, so I didn't put De Bruyne in, because I felt with this team, I feel like I haven't got any Man City or Liverpool players in my team, but I did that on the basis that I don't feel like, maybe with the exception of Robertson, any of them have hit their top level at any point this season yet. I think De Bruyne is just a little bit off his top level, so I haven't put him in based on that. Jonathan, I'm going to tell you my midfield three, and I'm going to ask for your feedback on it. I think you'll like the balance, to be fair. I've got my favourite player, his name I say differently every week. Højbjerg, this is the base of my midfield, sitting in front of the back four. I think he's been excellent part of what Mourinho's done at Spurs this season. And then I've got Ward-Prowse and Fernandes either side. Obviously, Højbjerg and Ward-Prowse have played together before as well at Southampton. What do you make of my midfield through?
Yeah, no, I like that. And Højbjerg and Ward-Prowse were both sort of on my short list. They definitely be in my squad if I was building a squad. And so the Ward-Prowse gives you that balance that Mason Mount gives you, and that Martin's team sadly lacks.
Yeah, I mean,
I enjoyed your just plea to Jonathan. Oh, please validate my team.
I mean, when you've got two football connoisseurs on the show, Martin, like Jonathan and myself, you've got to ask the opinion. So,
not all about numbers, you know.
Exactly. You'll probably not find Jonathan and myself on the Who Scored podcast next week. The front three, then, Jonathan, I'll come to you again first. What's your front three?
Well, the first thing was I put in Kane and Son immediately. I think you have to have the two there as a pair. They've been exceptional together. They each make the other better. So Son on the left, Kane through the middle. Then you're saying, well, who can play on the right? Who would be good at cutting into the spaces that Kane leaves? And happily, there's a really obvious answer, which is Mohamed Salah, who's leading scorer in the league. So it's not particularly unusual or different front three, but Son, Kane, and Salah.
Yeah, my team. I've let myself down a bit, Jonathan, here, because I wanted Son and Kane, obviously, because they link up so well, dovetail so well, but I also felt the best player in the Premier League at the moment, Jack Grealish, had to be in the team, so I've gone for that as my front three with Son on the right. But I will say it's a very flexible front three with people moving all over the place, Kane dropping deep, people can interchange positions. That's what I've gone for.
Jonathan? What do you think about that?
I wasn't going to ask him.
I mean, Son playing on the right. I mean, what's the poor lad got to do to be taken seriously?
I'll play Grealish on the right and Son on the left then.
I mean, I'm not sure I've ever seen Grealish play on the right, so you may know better than me whether he can do that. I mean, I guess logically,
no, he does do it every now and again. He actually played on the right in the Cup semi-final last season that Villa beat Leicester 2-1. Martin, he played a lot of that game on the right side and did very well. So
I remember he came on for his England debut on the right, didn't he? That went down well.
There we go.
But no, Grealish's game is all about coming in from the left. Dan knows that better than anyone. So, yeah, I'm not having Grealish on the right, but shock horror, I am having Son on the right. I've gone for the exact same as Dan. And again, it's cheating, but just based on the fact that Son actually has played on the right this season. He played there against Man City and Chelsea. He played twice on the right this season, nominally at least. So that was the justification I needed. Because he and Kane both have to be there, and I shock horror, I agree with Aston Villa fan Dan that Jack Grealish cannot not be in the team of the season. So far.
I should have picked Will Grigg and Luke O'Nien if we're just picking players who play for our teams.
Just coming to you, Jonathan, quickly. How come Grealish isn't in your team?
Just because, if you're, I think he needs to play in that midfield rather than on the left, particularly because Son's already there on the left. So if it's a choice on the left wing between Son and Grealish, I'm going Son. Yeah. And then in the midfield, you're basically picking one from Grealish, Fernandes, or De Bruyne. And I'm afraid he's third of those three. So, look, he's done very well, and he should be very proud of himself. But management at this level is all about tough decisions, and my tough decision was to leave a young man out. Yeah,
maybe we'll put the teams on social media somewhere and get the general.
There will be a vote.
Yeah. Do let us know in the comments as well whose team you think is the best.
Instant mute conversation.
Right, we won't get a share from Jonathan of that poll, I don't think.
No retweets from Jonathan this week. Just quickly then, and this one very briefly, just tell me who your surprise teams are so far this season. So Martin, I'll come to you first.
I've gone for, and you'd expect me to go for Villa, but I've gone for West Ham, just based on the fact that I think both Villa and West Ham, most sort of neutrals would have predicted that they would be sort of towards the bottom end of the table. But I think the difference between the two was Villa fans were cautiously optimistic that the signings we'd made would improve us enough to be out of a relegation battle. And that simply wasn't the case for West Ham fans. They were sort of on deadline day, they were just like, oh, we're pretty much doomed. So for them to be in the top half, or obviously almost only just, but for them to be in the top half at this stage, just steering clear of it. I don't think they've been consistent at all, but I think if we're talking about a surprise package, I just think that they've exceeded expectations more than any other team.
Yeah. Jonathan, who have you gone for?
I've gone for Villa. I thought they'd be better than last season, but I didn't think they'd be this much better. And it's easy to say now that they made good signings, but you never quite know how people are going to fit in. But Watkins has worked, Barkley's worked. They're clearly much better than Martinez has worked. They're clearly much better than they were, and to beat the champion 7-2 is a result that will be remembered for years. West Ham, I remain slightly unconvinced by. I think they've been pretty fortunate in a couple of games. But I thought they'd be in big relegation trouble, and that's not the case. So they have been better than anticipated, but I still suspect they'll end up being sort of lower mid-table rather than mid-table.
Yeah, the ghost of David Moyes is still lingering around in Jonathan's mind. I can tell there. I've obviously gone for Villa as well because I was optimistic, but there's no way I thought we'd be as good as we are to watch and go toe-to-toe with everyone like we have done so far this season. So I've gone for Villa as well. We move on now to surprise player, and I actually think there is only one answer for this. I don't know what you've gone for, Martin. Who did you pick?
So I knew that both of you had said the same thing. So to be fair, I think there's more than one answer.
Do you think? I don't think. I think any answer is wrong other than this.
I thought. Even it depends on how many games you're including. Because even John Stones, I think, is a massive surprise package based on just the fact that he's even played. Vestergaard, to a similar extent, has been a surprise package. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been a lot better, scored a lot more goals than people would have expected. But I've gone with, I think you'll like this one, Dan. I've gone with Anwar El Ghazi, just because he was done. He was done. Yeah. There was no way back for him, it didn't seem. And obviously he got sort of all the abuse on social media that meant that he left, which was obviously completely unjustified. I think there's still a good amount of the Villa fans who will always have credit in the bank for Anwar El Ghazi for the goal he scored in the playoff final. But to come back into the side recently, I was really worried when Trezeguet and Barkley were both injured at the same time, because I just thought, to be fair, I was one of the players who just one of the fans who just felt that Anwar El Ghazi was not quite good enough for the Premier League on and off the ball. And he's just proven me wrong in the last sort of 6 weeks or so. Scored consistently, looks confident. He's just busier than he was before, just getting involved in games. And I think it just goes to show like how a team playing well can influence a player who's clearly a talented player, but just never really seemed to fit. And sometimes you struggle to fit into a sort of team that's dysfunctional or not playing well. And I think we saw that with Villa in the relegation season when they signed Idrissa Gana Gueye, Jordan Veretout, Jordan Amavi, all gone on to be very good players and looked decent in parts at Villa. They had Jordan Ayew, who's gone on to sort of remain in the Premier League. So they didn't sign bad players, but it was just wrong time, too many at once, another story. But basically, it's just a case of a player who is talented is now playing in a team that's functional, playing well. And yeah, he's just surprised me massively over the last sort of month or two.
I like it a lot, Martin, because obviously it's very pro-Villa, but I'm not buying it because he's only been playing for a month and we can't question the John Stones appearance.
I didn't. Well, yeah.
Oh, you did off camera, Martin.
That was the team of the season.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is just my surprise package for someone who's just surprised me basically. But yeah.
Jonathan, do you want to talk to everyone about the correct answer to this question?
Yeah, I mean, Martin makes decent cases for a number of people there, but Bamford, surely. I mean, I wasn't sure Bamford was good enough for Leeds in the Championship. So for him to arrive in the Premier League and to score the quantity of goals and the quality of goals he scored, as well as doing all the other stuff that Bielsa demands he does, I think it's been a huge shock. And it's now led me to sort of question one of the most sort of revealing things that I've ever done in football journalism was a chat I had with Samuel Eto'o in 2006 in Cairo, and it was at the Cup of Nations, and he was lying in bed in his hotel room when I went up to interview him, and he was watching. When I got there, he was watching a game on TV. And it appeared to be some local game. The quality wasn't very good. The camera wasn't very good. It was some North African or Middle Eastern game on the telly, and Arabic writing on the screen. I was just sort of said to him, what are you watching? And he went, I don't know, but I just watch football of all levels because the runs you have to make at a bad level are different to the runs you make at a good level. So it's useful for me to learn them. And I just thought, what an amazingly, it's kind of obvious, but to have the intelligence to think, I actually have to study weak football as well as good football, because when I play weak sides, I have to do something different. And so I wonder whether Bamford is just better in the Premier League than he was in the Championship. It's something about the nature of the game in the Premier League is better suited to him. But you think of goals, the goal he scored against Villa was just a stunning goal. I wouldn't have thought he was anywhere near good enough to score, to have the imagination of a technique to pull that off. But he keeps doing it.
Yeah, that's the thing that's impressed me most, the range of his finishing and the different kind of goals he scored. He's got a lot in his armoury that I didn't think he had, and he's proved it week in, week out pretty much so far this season. So obviously I went for Bamford as well. Jonathan, will stay with you for underwhelming player.
Oh, who did I go for? I found this quite difficult. I went for Kai Havertz, which maybe is unfair because he is young, he has had COVID, so there are good reasons for it. But he's a player who's come in for a huge amount of money, and I don't think Lampard knows where he plays. He started 10 games in the Premier League this season in 5 different positions. And so that clearly hasn't helped him either. He hasn't been able to settle into the team, settle into a rhythm. So I'm absolutely not writing him off. I still think he's a very good player. I still think there's a very good chance he will show that in the Premier League. But for his first half season in the league, for somebody I would really look forward to seeing, that has been a disappointment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's been so underwhelming, you forgot who you'd picked at the start. So I think that probably says it all.
Been up since 5. I'm very tired.
Martin, who did you pick?
I've gone for Trent Alexander-Arnold. And again, I think obviously he's young, he's still very, very young, and we have to consider that. But where we've been so used to him playing at a certain level, he's been a long way off that level, and not just this season. I'd say since Project Restart, really. He's just been nowhere near the best sort of exceptional standards that he has admittedly set in the past. And obviously there was the stat from Monday where he lost possession more times than any other player in a game. It's a sort of quite misused stat. He lost possession 1,047 times last season, which was over 300 more than any other player. So this isn't new for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He attempts passes and crosses that other players don't. And to be fair, he needs to work on his pass selection a lot of the time. His pass accuracy is poor, and you will get that with players that make sort of take risks. For example, Fernandez's pass accuracy is relatively poor, about 75%, which is similar to Alexander-Arnold, which is low. But yeah, I just think he's actually losing possession less this season than last season. I just think maybe there's a sign that he's perhaps actually being a little more safe than he was. Obviously, it doesn't seem like good timing based on what he did on Monday. And then obviously where they've had the defensive injuries, he's obviously been exposed a bit in that regard. There's a lot of question marks over the defensive side of his game. I think those have come to the fore. So yeah, he doesn't have the same players around it, hasn't had the same players around him consistently, and that's important. So he looks a little bit less confident. So of the players to start 10 or more matches before Project Restart, Alexander-Arnold ranked 13th in our ratings. And of the players to start 10 since Project Restart, he ranks 135th and 16th out of right backs. So yeah, wow. well off the pace for a long time now. So yeah, I'm not writing off. He's an exceptional player, and I'm sure he'll come good again. But it's been a tough time, undoubtedly.
Yeah, a big drop off there. I went for Aubameyang just because I think you cannot sign the contract that he signed and have the drop off that he's had. He's nowhere near his best level. I know Arsenal have had their problems this season as well, but I just think he hasn't scored enough goals, quite simply, and that's not the goal scorer that we've all become used to. Now, best youngster, I've gone for Fofana, who we've already covered. I just wondered who you two went for. So, Jonathan, again, I'll come to you first.
I went for Bukayo Saka. Who I think has been exceptional in a range of different positions, a range of different roles. He seems to have everything. He seems to have positional discipline. Seems to be able to essentially drop anywhere on the pitch and be able to play there. Obviously, great on the ball. And in what's been at times quite a difficult season for Arsenal, I think he and Gabriel have been the two real shining lights for them.
Yep, Martin, who did you go for?
I think this might be telling that we sort of forget how young he is, because he's in Jonathan's team of the season. It's Mason Mount. I went for as the top youngster this season. I just think it's based on that sort of, not reimagining of his game, but I think obviously early in his career, everyone was like, oh, he's the next Lampard. He's scoring a lot of goals, making late runs into the box, and he still does that. But he's obviously playing deeper now, playing in a 3 in midfield, and I think that's where we've seen him. That's where he's been at his best. Like Jonathan says, tactically he's excellent. His tackles are doubled this season, basically based on playing a little bit deeper, but still tackles and interceptions are both doubled. Key passes are up substantially despite that. So his profile's changed, and he just looks like his fit now in that sort of number 8 role rather than a number 10 role. So yeah, I just think we forget how young he is sometimes, and obviously got quite a lot of unwarranted sort of stick or comparisons to Grealish, which we now know are sort of just not fair, not appropriate at all. And yeah, I've been really impressed by him, because I wouldn't say I was a doubter, but I wasn't entirely convinced, but I am now.
And let's hope we see him playing number 8 for England in the summer rather than further forward, because like you say, I think that is his best position. Jonathan, best signing of the season so far?
We talked about this on a pod before Christmas, and I don't think, even though he's been injured since, I don't think Mans has changed. The Diego Jota, we knew he was good. I didn't realize he was this good. And I think the little wobble Liverpool have had over the last sort of week or so, I think partly is because they don't have him there as an option to take the pressure off the front 3, to come off the bench. And sort of in his absence, I think you see what an important figure he was through the autumn and the early part of the winter. Gabriel, I think, has done really well, but I would still go for Jota. Yeah,
he's been a real big miss for them. Like you say, just that different option to bring on. That they've really lacked that in the last couple of weeks. Martin, who did you choose as best signing of the season so far?
So he's in my team of the season, so I've sort of covered him a bit already, but I've gone for Ruben Dias, just because I think he's had a huge impact on Manchester City's sort of defensive solidity, and obviously there were question marks as to whether that's sort of negated their attacking prowess a bit. But I think now that they've sort of settled on that defence, and Stones and Diaz are playing very, very well, I think that gives them a massive platform to build from. And yeah, I just think he's been really, really impressive. So yeah, covered him before, but yeah, gone for Ruben Dias.
Yeah, my best signing was covered in my team as well, but I just think it is Emi Martinez. I just think the difference he's made is there for everyone to see. He's an exceptional goalkeeper. I still can't believe that Villa have got him. I think it was the best piece of business in the summer for the price as well. So I went for Emi Martinez. And to finish the podcast on now, the one that everyone wants to win is the best player of the season so far heading into 2021. Jonathan, who did you choose?
I can't remember. Who was it?
Son.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously loads of candidates, but I think Son has been excellent for a long, long time, and I think he's gone up another level this season. I think his partnership with Kane, which I've already talked about, is exceptional. But he seems to be an even more lethal finisher than he was. His movement seems even better. The intelligence of his runs, his pace is, he's really hard to. He outmuscles defenders as well, which perhaps is a part of this game that can get overlooked. I just sort of think of that modern breed of forward who comes in from wide into central area. He is absolutely one of the best of those, and of that handful who are at that level, playing the best at the moment and playing the best this season. Yep,
very, very fair. Very underrated in general as well. Martin, who did you choose?
I've gone for Jack Grealish. Aston Villa fan picks Jack Grealish. I think for me it was between, obviously Son's been outstanding, Kane's been outstanding, but for me it was between Grealish and Fernandes. And I just think if you strip away obviously Fernandes' penalties, their stats are essentially identical in terms of goals and assists. Both got 7 assists. I think Fernandes has 1 more goal if you take away penalties, but both essentially very similar. Grealish's stats this season are just outstanding. Top for key passes from open play, most fouled player, 3rd for assists, 3rd for dribbles, 3rd for touches in the opposition box. And I think pertinently 2nd for possession 1 in the attacking 3rd, which is obviously an area of his game that has been questioned and in the past. And he's just worked, like a lot of players, when they get better, and as he so clearly has, they tend to maybe step off the gas a little bit. He's just working harder than ever, in my opinion, and physically, he's an absolute specimen compared to what he used to be. He's quick. I've never seen a player develop so much pace. He wins aerial duels. He's got a leap on him, and I just think that's the difference between the two is the sort of physicality of Grealish. And I think there's just a fear factor in opposition players when Grealish gets on the ball that maybe there isn't quite as much. There is with Fernandes, but they're not as scared of him as you are with a Grealish, who's a different type of player. I concede that. But I think if you strip away set pieces, very similar output, but Grealish does far more dribbles. And even off the ball, like I said, he's doing a lot. I think Fernandes, where I've gone for Grealish ahead of Fernandes, it's a lot of it is in their sort of pass selection as well. Fernandes will give away the ball a lot. And Grealish is posting better creativity stats despite giving away the ball less. He's lost possession 100 times fewer than Bruno Fernandes this season. I think it's between those two. But for me, the Villa fan, Jack Grealish has just had that little bit more than Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, I think Grealish has played a couple of less games as well because Villa have still got a couple of games in hand. Be no surprise to learn that I've gone for Grealish as well for the best player. Martin summed it all up quite nicely there, but I've not done it because I'm a Villa fan. I've done it because I'm WhoScored loyal, and he is statistically the best player according to WhoScored so far this season. So that's why I went for Jack Grealish. I think that does us for this week, chaps. So thanks ever so much for joining me. We will be back next week with our normal preview. Obviously, we've done something a little bit different today. Don't forget to check out the Football Manager competition. Give yourself a chance of winning this season's games. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well and comment with your thoughts. Whose team of the season did you think was best? Give the video a nice little like as well. And we'll be back next week. Cheers for watching.